We live? Yeah, we're good. All right, what's going on, everybody? Let me start that again yeah, it looks like I missed it. What's going on, everybody? We are here for Dandadan Monday. It's been a hot minute for Dandadan Monday, but we are here for it, finally. A proper Dandadan Monday. We got Dragfang in chat. We got Foofy the Great in chat with some strong opinions on Battle Series. We'll talk about that. Mohammed, sup? What's going on, Mohammed? We got Oscar. What's going on, Oscar? We got Justin Garcia. What's going on, Justin? Glad to have you. We'll give everyone a few minutes before we start the stream proper. For anyone who is in chat, what did we read yesterday for manga chapters? What did we read today for manga chapters? What's the verdict? I do want to, because I don't think Dandadan is going to take the whole stream. Today's chapter was a pretty straightforward chapter. We did get some new information, but it wasn't like action heavy. It wasn't even really like information heavy. It was just a lot of implications, but it was pretty straight to the point. Yeah. The fact that they turned the date into Kenta glaze, ew. I mean, what's wrong with Kenta? I'm also like, what did we really expect? I mean, I love it. It's my favorite series, but it's Dandadan. Like, what did we really expect here? You know what I mean? Excuse me. How long have we been going? 2 minutes. Ocaron has Pinocchio powers. Maybe he has two. Maybe he too must go through the journey to become a real man, a real boy. Yeah, I do want to kind of talk about that connection, because at first the whole like fairy tale thing seemed random. Like, it didn't seem like it had direct connections, but now like the more we look at it and the more they talk about it, the more it seems like pretty direct connections. I'm on Dandadan season 2. It's so good. I can't wait for season 3. Season 3 is going to be awesome. Although season 3 brings up the topic of like, is Dandadan just a battle shonen? Which I want to talk about. We'll read today's chapter, and then we'll talk about the whole battle shonen thing. We got Eddie Rayman. What's going on, Eddie? How you doing today? It's been 4-ish minutes. We'll give everyone another minute before we get started. Let's open up. Let's go to Shonen Jump. Did the new season of One Piece drop? It comes out tomorrow. That's going to be interesting. One Piece live action season 2 premieres on Netflix March 10th, which is tomorrow. Will debut all episodes simultaneously, featuring the Straw Hat crew entering the Grand Line and Baroque Works. The season will cover Logetown and progress into Alabasta. Okay. So One Piece comes out tomorrow. So I do wonder how far they're going to get into it. Because if they're doing Logetown, they'll probably get I actually don't know. That's a good question, because they did all of East Blue in season 1. So honestly, yeah, I feel like they could do all of Alabasta in one season, depending on the pacing. Did I hear or see about the Crunchyroll lawsuit? Crunchyroll lawsuit. Allegedly sharing people's user information. I mean, that sucks, but I'm just like, companies have been doing that forever. I mean, I can't imagine a single company who's not doing that. So if they get caught for it, I mean, good, but also like, they're not the only one. It sucks, and they should be, if they really did do it, they should be held accountable. But like, real talk, every company steals your information and sells it for money. Like that's just how it works. Dandadan is not just a battle shonen. It is not just a rom-com. Dandadan is the Dandadan. Where I don't really like how the latest arc of Dandadan has just been tearing everything down and retconning events in favor of handing everything to the villains for inflated stakes. I liked the last chapter of... Oh, so you're talking about Modulo. Okay. A little confused, but that's fine. So many things are coming out in March. The new season of Baki is out. Dope. The second part of Beastars. Dope. Second season of One Piece live action. And then JoJo Part 7. Yeah, JoJo Part 7 is going to be interesting. Although, wouldn't that be April? Let's see. Spring anime 2026. Oh no. No, that looks like yeah, I guess that was late. I guess it was late winter or very early spring. Interesting. All right. March 19th. Okay. Dope. Thoughts on the Keto villains, Dandadan? Was that the Subterraneans? I think, yeah, the Keto family. Wasn't that the Subterraneans? I like them. They're interesting. Your thoughts on how Dandadan will wrap up its story and what characters will end up dying? Too early. I don't know. People are saying Kagurabachi chapters have been really good. Yeah, I can't wait to catch up to that. We might actually, no, we probably won't do that today because I'm like too behind on that. Yeah, I don't know if they've said that JoJo Part 7 is going to be weekly. I don't remember hearing that. All right. Getting distracted here. So let's go ahead and read the Dandadan chapter. So Dandadan 228. For full disclosure, I have already read the chapter, but we're going to read it again, obviously. And of course, if you're not caught up on the Dandadan manga and you don't want to get spoiled, now's your time to step out. The current arc of Ichi the Witch has been really strong. Yeah, I really want to catch up on that one for sure. Yeah, you can still try to catch up on Gachi Akata. We are still on break. Jesus, that's crazy. I mean, it's good that Kei Urina is getting the rest that she deserves, but like, it kind of sucks to think that like she's going through it, so to speak. Anyway, so like I said, if you don't want to get spoiled, might want to peace out. But here we go. We are going to read Dandadan chapter 228. So Seiko is with Turbo Granny, and they are talking to this like group of elders who ran the sort of resort where Momo was taken care of. They're talking about the situation with these attacks. They say it sounds like the Black Paladins. We've heard of them. They've infiltrated urban areas. The Black Paladins are a clan of 13 prominent noble families from throughout the world. They share an ideology of conquest, but they don't really guarantee cooperation. So they're more like a loose alliance rather than like one tight organization. But something that occurred to me just now, it's like obvious that this seems European themed or like Western culture themed as opposed to like Eastern culture themed, because it's all like shields and swords and, you know, certain like heraldry, right? Certain symbolism, right? Like dragons and stuff, bearded axes. And then of course the one invading our lands is Vlad, a prince from the Delacroix family. And that seems to be like a medieval picture, possibly referencing the actual Vlad the Impaler, but could be wrong. So what's interesting about that is, so Count Saint Germain was a real life person in like, I want to say the 1300s, the 1400s. He was around during the time of Voltaire. So whenever Voltaire was around, I want to say Saint Germain. Oh, I was off by just a little bit. Nope, never mind. Hold on. Count Saint Germain. The Count of Saint Germain. Oh yeah, I was way off, my bad. He was around the end of the 17th and beginning of the 18th centuries. So like 1700 basically. So I was off by a little bit. But this confirms that like this, like our Count Saint Germain in Dandadan could be like the actual Count Saint Germain if these families, these noble clans really do go back like hundreds of years ago. So anyway, the Delacroix family apparently collecting yokai powers, aiming to become the greatest of the 13 noble families. So there's like infighting within the Black Paladins, and anybody that has anything to do with yokai exorcisms, yokai powers, they're getting sucked into their power conflict. I'm muted? Am I actually muted? No, it says my audio is coming through. Okay, now I hear him. Okay. His sound is not catching to the stream? Am I out of sync? The current arc of Ichi the Witch has been really strong. The sound is back. Can everybody hear me okay? Can everyone give me like a thumbs up or a thumbs down? Am I in sync with the stream, or am I like the sound is back? Describe the audio situation, I guess. Like, is my audio behind the visuals? I think you're good. Okay. We'll wait for everyone else. That might have just been an internet issue. Let me see. I think you're good. Yes, we can. All right, so it seems like we're good now. Let's see. I think people just didn't know what the issue is properly. But okay, so let me basically sum up what I was talking about, because it seems like there was a problem as I was talking. So let me do this again. So basically, Count Saint Germain was a real life person during like the 1700s, and we're just finding out that the Black Paladins are like a group of noble families from around that time, maybe before. So there's a good chance that this Count Saint Germain is like, it's more proof that this Count Saint Germain is the real life Count Saint Germain, and he's like hundreds and hundreds of years old. All right. If there are audio issues, just like give me like some sort of indication in the comments, because by default my YouTube stream, right, because I have the stream on my stream software, and then I have the stream on YouTube, and on YouTube by default it's behind by a few seconds anyway, so I can't really tell if there's an issue. I can only tell if like the stream stops, or like there's something wrong with the visuals. Everyone's saying it's good now. Okay, cool. Anyway, they make a point in this chapter, and I wonder how it'll play into some of the upcoming plot points. These characters that Seiko is talking to, these like elders, make a point of saying, culture and teachings, like everything that we have in modern society, is an accumulation of everything that was handed down before us. And what's interesting, they say, Seiko, you two must pass on the lessons to the next generation, so the young ones don't make the same mistakes. I don't like that, because to me that says Seiko might die. It seems like they're foreshadowing the idea, they're like setting you up for the idea that Seiko isn't going to be around forever, and I don't like that. I really hope Seiko is not gonna die. Anyway, so at this point, Seiko's like, all right, thanks for the help. I'll make sure to keep all of this in mind. They're like, okay, we're gonna go watch TV now. We gotta go catch up with our programs. We gotta go catch up with our stories. So, and this is the other interesting thing. They say, we've sent a strong person to your place. Take care. Then they flex, like, they literally aura farm. They say, we'd better make a proper showing of the power of Yatakarasu. Now, Yatakarasu literally is like a three-legged crow, but symbolically, it's a symbol of divine power, which is what these characters have been sort of set up to be. They're like some kind of, not god and not like kami, but basically they're like a symbol of like divine intervention. They are basically like divine entities. They're not necessarily gods, but they seem to be like, I guess, god adjacent. That being said, it's going to be very interesting when we meet this character that they sent to help everyone. So Saint Germain is much older than he looks. Is there a chance he could have invented bread? No, because bread is really, 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 really old. Although that would be super funny. I love how they talk about this ancient history and teach lessons for the future, and then they say, hey, our show's gonna start, we have to go. See, yes, but like all the characters do that. Like look at Turbo Granny. Turbo Granny is like, you know, like 200 years old or something, and she plays with cats, she watches TV, she plays baseball, she does like all kinds of stupid little silly things. She uses smartphones, so Dandadan is very much with the times. Of course, we see the usual banter between Seiko and Turbo Granny because they brought her these treats, and Turbo Granny eats all the treats. So then we cut to the amusement park, and I don't know. This seems to be some kind of cultural reference that, at least for me, goes right over my head. But the characters are all like, come one, come all, to fulfill the promise of a date here. Come one, come all, to fulfill the promise of a date here. At Super Amusement Park, have I come? I feel like they're referencing something that I don't get the reference to, but that's okay. So anyway, this is supposed to be a date between Okarun and Momo. Then Vamola came along, and then of course, because it's Vamola, she invited the whole crew because she doesn't really get what a date is. So she's like, oh, it's like when you hang out with your friends. I do think it's funny that Kinta has a literal metric for how much each of the girls in the group are in love with him. And he thinks each of the girls in the group, at least the ones that are with him right now, are all at least in love with him. Or they're getting there. Momo definitely loves him. Vamola, like, just loves him. And Ira is, like, romantically interested in him. I think that's hilarious. Maybe the real reason Turbo Granny came back is because she can't live on her own being unemployed. So she went back to Seiko so she could have food and a home for free. So Turbo Granny is like when your kid goes to college and they're like, all right, don't call me, I have big important things to do. And then the first weekend they're like, hey, I'm coming home to do laundry. Make sure there's groceries at the house. That's basically Turbo Granny. So they mention, Ira says something like, oh, I got into dinosaurs. Then she talks about a meteor hitting the Earth. Then something about the Earth's magnetic field and gravity. So I'm going to assume that because they made this seemingly random reference to the Earth's gravity, that this is going to come up at the end of this fight that's being set up. So then, right, they make a reference to Okarun. Okarun says he's a liar because he said like this was going to be a real date. He calls himself a liar. And then interestingly enough, the Dragon Knights show up, like a faction of the Black Paladins, and they say our priority target is he who holds the power of the adventures of Pinocchio, and they seem to set this up as if that is Okarun's power. Now this could be a red herring, this could be a bait and switch, and it's really like Gigi or something. But it seems to be setting up that Okarun is Pinocchio. Why is Momo above Vamola? She's an alien girl in an Evangelion outfit. Get your priorities straight, Kenta. No. It's not that he likes Momo more than Vamola, but he thinks Momo loves him the most. Then Vamola likes him almost as much, and then Ira is just now falling in love with him. That's what the metric means. I know everyone is going to say this, but I do think it's kind of messed up that these Dragon Knights are literally just the KKK with no necks. Definitely going to be interesting when Okarun defeats the KKK, but we'll see. But yeah, so I kind of want to talk about Dandadan as a manga, like as a quote-unquote shonen, because obviously it's on Jump Plus. It's not technically a shonen, but it's like shonen adjacent, right? Because nobody looks at Dandadan and goes, oh, Dandadan is my favorite seinen manga, right? It's like, it's basically a shonen, but not really. I want to talk about, like, what do we call in Dandadan these days? Because, if you follow the channel, oh, Edens, you came at the perfect time. So we just wrapped up our discussion of the chapter, but we'll talk about it more. But, we're talking about, like, what would you call Dandadan, right? So I want to talk about, like, what do we call in Dandadan these days? Like, what kind of manga is Dandadan? The costumes are probably based on the clothes of people who fought in the Crusades in Europe rather than the KKK. I totally agree, but I see dudes in ghost costumes with pointy hats and slits for eyes. I see KKK. That's just me. And especially like villains. KKK. But, and I'm just like, I'm anticipating what everyone else is gonna say. Everyone's gonna post like, oh, look at Dandadan beating up the KKK. Look at Okarun beating the KKK. Prediction about Dinosaur. Our alien friend dropped Vamola's upgraded kaiju battlesuit from Spaceship. That would be sick. So here's the thing about like when it comes to Dandadan's genre, right? It's not its demographic, but its genre. So early on, like first few years of Dandadan, I had no problem definitively saying Dandadan is a romance. Like 5 months ago, I posted a video saying why Dandadan needed to kill the romance, and I said it's moving away narratively from the romance so that it can focus on other stuff in the narrative. I did not explicitly say like it's just a battle shonen now, but I said it's growing beyond just being a romance. And like the whole community wanted my head for that. So fast forward to the last video, one of the more recent videos I posted, it was the one called it was the one that was basically like why they're killing anime's best genre. Oh, why anime's best genre is slowly dying. Talking about like, you know, how battle shonen are becoming more like generic as they like mix with other genres. And the implication was that Dandadan is more than just a battle shonen, right? It's not just a battle shonen. And everyone wanted my head for that because they were like, just because Dandadan doesn't do other things doesn't change the fact that it is a battle shonen. There are people in the comments of that video saying Dandadan is definitely a battle shonen. So on one hand, 5 months ago-ish, I said Dandadan is becoming more of a battle series. And people were like, you don't know what you're talking about. And then on the other hand, like a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I said Dandadan is more than just a battle series, right? And people hated that too. So Dandadan has, for a lack of a better term, a bit of an identity crisis where it feels like a battle series. It definitely feels like a romance at times. It's sci-fi, it's a little bit of fantasy, action, romance, comedy. It is truly like just a mix of everything, to the point where like I'm kind of with Eden's at this point. It's just a shonen manga. Like that's it. It's an action comedy. It's an action rom-com is really what I would call it. It's an action rom-com. The only reason it feels like more of a battle series now is because for the last basically year now, every chapter has been a fight, basically. And the whole like saga we're in right now feels like a JoJo arc where it's just like, you know, every few weeks they're fighting a new villain. Has too many things for me to just label it as one thing. Yeah. The lack of like a real clearly defined power system is one thing where I'm like, okay, that doesn't really feel like a pure, like a traditional battle series. Not that all battle series have to have like a Hunter x Hunter type battle system, but when you don't have one, that's usually like, okay, probably not a battle series. Probably. That's a good thing to me. I like that it is both a romance and a battle series, and now we have an overall plot and bad guys to fight. Battle series makes sense, but it's more romance, more integral to the story. Yeah. But that's what I'm saying, though, is like there is a substantial portion of the community where if you say Dandadan is not a battle shonen, they're like, what are you talking about? It's absolutely a battle shonen. I mean, look at the beginning of the stream. All I said in the title, I didn't even like get to explain what I meant yet. All I said, what did we call the stream? Is Dandadan just a battle shonen? Just that question, just the way I worded it, people took it to mean that just because something is a battle shonen, it is less than other kinds of manga. The term battle series or battle shonen is a very loaded term that means very many different things depending on who you say it to and who says it. Then what do you call Inuyasha, which is a shonen that also has a romance? The thing about that is the fights were always like a big part of the story. The thing with Dandadan is for a good early part of the story, the fights were clearly second to the incidents between Okarun and Momo. There was romance in Inuyasha for the whole story, but Inuyasha also follows a very specific formula where it's like, oh, this just feels like not necessarily a battle series, but like, you know, like kind of like a villain of the week type story. The funniest thing is that people wouldn't have such a problem calling Dandadan a battle shonen if it weren't for the fact that battle shonen always sucked at romance and never developed it. For the most part, yeah, obviously there's series that handle it better than others. So like My Hero and Black Clover, obviously not the best examples. Undead Unluck handles its romance really well. Dr. Stone doesn't really have any romance, but it's also not a battle shonen. Fairy Tail obviously isn't the best example. I'm trying to think. I mean, you can name so many other series where the thing about, and I just recorded a video on this because you know what series actually handles romance really great, and I'm gonna say this is gonna be in a new video, so if I say anything that you're like, oh gee, what are you smoking, what, you gotta talk to your weed guy because he clearly mixed something in your usual stuff, what are you smoking? You know what series handles romance really great is Gachi Akata. And I'm gonna let that sit for a second, and then I'm gonna say it again. You know what series, you know what battle series, clearly a battle series, handles romance really well? Gachi Akata. And let's talk about that now that we've brought it up. Because if I say Gachi Akata has romance, you're probably like, no, it doesn't. There's no romance in Gachi Akata. Rudo doesn't have a romantic interest. There's no ships in Gachi Akata. There's no, you know, there's no tsunderes in Gachi Akata. What are you talking about? But what happens in the first chapter of Gachi Akata? Rudo has a huge crush on his childhood friend. But that gets resolved in that first chapter because what happens? He gets accused of murder. She falls in line with everybody else. And then, like, that's it. That's done. There is no, like, oh, I'm going to go, like, save her. Or I'm going to go prove that, like, I'm the boyfriend she always wanted or something. The thing about Gachi Akata is it has romance, But the difference is it has complete romantic subplots that get resolved basically as soon as they're introduced. So Rudo has a romantic interest in chapter 1 that is introduced and resolved in chapter 1. It's short. It doesn't feel romantic in the sense that like, oh, look at them, they're in love. But there's romantic feelings and they get resolved in that moment. So that's one example. Second example, Amo. And let me explain what I mean. So Amo is a character who is obsessed with romantic love. She experiences all this trauma, so she uses the fantasy of romantic love to handle that trauma in an unhealthy way, right? So there's romance as a theme, not like shipping wars that we see in My Hero or Black Clover, but romance as a concept is introduced in that arc, and then it gets resolved in that arc when Rudo and Amo basically reach the conclusion that they're like, you know what, this whole thing of like being obsessed with romantic love and using it as like an escape from my problems and my trauma isn't the healthiest thing. What I should be doing is opening up and like talking to my friends and making friends and getting outside of myself, right? It's not resolved. What's not resolved? I'm trying to think. And then, so, and I won't get into details for spoiler reasons, but there's also a romantic subplot, if you can even call it a subplot, because it's actually kind of important to the arc. But in the arc with 2 Lily, right, this current arc that they're in, especially in the flashback, right, there's a whole bunch of romance in that arc. Some of it is implied, but it's like pretty heavily implied to a point where like, okay, clearly there's romantic feelings here. And obviously the arc isn't over yet, but it does seem like it's mostly going to get resolved. The difference between Gachi Akata and so many other manga, and the reason why like you don't think of Gachi Akata as a romantic manga, is because traditionally in a romance, you introduce these romantic, you know, relationships, but you let them linger on throughout the story for the purpose of romantic tension. So like with Black Clover, right? Asta has like his harem and you have all these potential ships. So the idea is that like, even if, you know, Asta is obviously never going to end up with like Mimosa, you can still like ship them for the whole story and there's still romantic tension there because like they never conclusively like resolve that dynamic. That's why like Black Clover like has like romance in it. The reason Gachi Akata has romance but doesn't feel romantic is, one, because it doesn't let these romantic subplots linger for the sake of dragging out the story. And the other reason is because it handles romance outside of just purely romantic love. It also handles like romantic love and also just love for like your favorite games, your favorite TV shirt, your favorite staff, your favorite umbrella, your favorite scissors, your favorite gloves, your parents, your siblings, right? So love and romance are handled like very, like in a very rewarding way in Gachi Akata, where it's clearly set apart from typical battle series. That is my rant about that. If you can't write romance and don't want to develop it, that's fine, but then why do you include romance in your battle shonen? Why would you include a plot you don't intend to develop? Because the idea is, if you introduce like a romantic subplot and then just like don't resolve it. The idea is like a reader will still hang on to the story because they're like, okay, maybe such and such are finally going to end up together. Like maybe something is going to happen. So what they'll do is like Asta meets Mimosa. Mimosa has a crush on Asta. In like every, I don't know, like 20 chapters, 50 chapters, Mimosa will like say a thing about Asta, and it's like, oh, she said a thing. She said a thing. There might be a thing, right? Like they might get together, right? Like I want to keep reading. Maybe they'll get together, right? It's a classic writing mechanic because you can just like drop these ships everywhere in the story. So then like it keeps readers engaged through romantic tension. And then the other thing is like you have all of these avenues where like when you need to take a break from the plot or like you run out of stuff to write, you can then turn to these romantic subplots that you set up and just use those to drive the plot before you come up with other stuff to write. And that's what people have complaining about. That's what people have been complaining about in the context of Dandadan, is that the romance had a really good momentum, but now we're at a point where Tatsu just lets it linger there for romantic tension without just resolving certain plot lines, certain beats to their dynamic. Dandadan has such a good romance because the author created a story with a romance as the core of the story, which he plans to develop. He didn't add it because others do. He added the romance because he had a plan for it. Yeah, there was a plan, but the reason people hit a certain point like a year ago or like 6 months ago where they're like, you know, like, I'm sick of this, is because we set things up and then we like cut it and then just like put it aside to be resolved later. Excuse me. Literally reading Naruto, and anytime Hinata fangirls over Naruto, then we never address it again till the next time she faints seeing him. Again, it's just, we're setting up a romantic subplot where it's in the back of your mind and it like feels like progress, but nothing really comes of it until like basically pain, till like Hinata sort of like sets herself apart from everyone else. Dandadan romance isn't lingering, it's just halted. I mean, we're just saying potato potato at that point. I mean, what is the difference between lingering and halted? Right? I mean, am I crazy for saying that? Again, I'm not saying this in the context of Dandadan is like an objectively bad writing choice, but like also it's not surprising that people who read Dandadan for the romance get frustrated because we keep like, you know, bait and switching when it comes to like romantic development. Like, it's not necessarily like, oh, this story sucks now, but it's like, it makes sense why people are like, oh my god, would they just like get to the point already? Setup needs proper closure to feel satisfying. There's like, in a romance, romantic subplots go like this. In Dandadan, we're at a point where like, we're here, we should be here, but we get here, and then we pull away. Romance is good whether it's bad or good. It adds so much breather from just plot the whole time. I have a comment about that. Well, maybe saying halted was wrong. Just exploring a different part of the relationship. Okay, that's the thing though, right? It's like, what is the different part of the relationship? Like, is this not just like stuff that we've basically hovered around for like a year or two now? Again, I'm not trying to say any of this is bad, but it's understandable why people would get frustrated and say, can we just get to the point? A romantic relationship for the protagonist in Battle Shonen is a bit like a rival for the protagonist. People add them in because they're standard, not necessarily because they have a plan for it. Yeah, that makes sense. So somebody said, it's Izzy and Thing said, romance is good whether it's bad or good. It adds so much breather from just the plot the whole time. I completely disagree. I think if you are going to add themes of romance, love, or like romantic subplots into the story, you have to treat it like anything else. Like, treat it like a training arc. If you're going to start a training arc, then like plan out the training arc, right? If it's going to be like an isolated thing where it's like whatever, 10 chapters, and then you move on to like the next part of the story, then write a complete training arc. Or if it's going to be like an arc within a bigger arc, then like make sure you have the beats of it planned out so that it feels like it's a part of the arc rather than a distraction from the story. The problem with romance in battle series is it's treated as a distraction from the main story rather than like a storyline itself, right? So like in One Piece, for example, there is romance in some of the arcs. There are like romantically connected characters, but for the most part, whenever there is a romantic interest, it's either some combination of romantic relief and or like a distraction from the story. So the best example, I guess, would probably be Hiyori, right? In Wano, because she seems to be romantically interested in Zoro, but usually when it's brought up, it's just like comedic relief, right? There is no like deeper connection between Hiyori and Zoro. It's more just like Zoro happens to be around and Hiyori is like, ooh, he's, you know, like a badass swordsman. I kind of like him. But like, that's it, right? It's like, it's a distraction from the story. It's a distraction from Zoro's like character arc in Wano. Maybe that's what distinguishes current Battle Shonen from older Battle Shonen, authors being intentional as opposed to just using standards, tropes, right? Archetypes. I think a good example of like newer manga moving away from the tropes of older manga is Kagurabachi. I think Kagurabachi is a great example of like either do romance or don't do it at all. I think it's fine to move away from it if you see there's development happening. Unlike other series where the romance more so feels like a gag or it's in constant purgatory. Example would be Natsu Lucy, Erza, Jellal. Yeah. Yeah, Fairy Tail has that constant, like, will they, won't they thing. No, but, like, look at Kagurabachi, right? Kagurabachi is, like, totally different from something like Gachi Akata, where, like, Gachi Akata doesn't feel like a romantic story, but when you sit down and think about it, you're like, oh, yeah, there's actually a bunch of romance. It's not exactly, you know, romantic, like, shipping, but it's got romance in it. Then you have Kagurabachi, where there are a handful of characters that Hokazono could have used as like romantic interests for Chihiro, but it's like it's never a thing, not even once, right? Like there's the one girl swordsman, her like partner is like the guy with like the sumo hair. That could have been a romantic interest for Chihiro, and that's just not a thing. But it makes perfect sense for a story like Kagurabachi, because Chihiro is not a character who at this point in the story really has room in his character arc for romantic interests. Like, he is a character that is so much about like working on himself that having a romantic interest truly would feel like a distraction from his character arc. It's the same reason when you have these characters like Luffy, like Naruto, like Goku, when they have romantic interests, those characters feel like distractions because their motivation is Pirate King, Hokage, you know, get stronger. So when you add have a girlfriend to the equation, it feels asynchronous. Like it feels out of sync with what they're about as a character. So to put a romantic interest in Kagurabachi would feel kind of stupid right now. That doesn't mean you can't do it later in the story when like Chihiro is like grown as a character, but Kagurabachi is an example of like sometimes less is more. So like you just assume that like adding things to a story is a simple matter of arithmetic. Like if I add sci-fi and fantasy and romance and this and that and right? Right? You would just assume that like it's a simple matter of arithmetic. Like the more things I add to a story, the more things there are for people to enjoy. But that's not it. Like Kagurabachi is an example of like, you can have a story be better for deliberately choosing not to add certain appeals. That's what I think anyway. Senor Pink, right? That's a good one. And Kuma as well. Yeah, no, I'm not saying One Piece has like objectively bad romantic subplots. I'm just saying like, you know, a character like Boa, right? Because obviously, you know, I'm not gonna say Boa is a bad character or that, you know, is handled poorly, because of course she's interested in Luffy because of the way he treats her when he finds out about her backstory, blah 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 blah. I'm not saying all that. I'm just saying it's just funny how Oda does that. How Boa is just like, you know, goes from like tyrannical empress to like waifu. Same thing with Hiyori, same thing for Pudding, right? It's like, okay, so what's gonna happen with Sanji and Pudding, right? Most romance in One Piece is a gag. Yeah, most of the time it's a gag. Or it's like an unresolved subplot. That's just like another thing to consider in the ether of One Piece. That doesn't mean there aren't good romantic subplots. It's just, it's not the case all the time. Yeah, a lot of this might sound familiar when you watch my video, I think this weekend. It should be this weekend. Keep an eye out for it. It was a video I had fun writing out because I do think it's kind of time to talk about like romance in shonen manga, because it's definitely changing, right? Like, I think a good example is Chainsaw Man, because What movie did everyone just like poop their pants about because it was so good? The Reze movie. And what is that? It's a romantic movie, right? Like if I said Chainsaw Man is a romantic series, it would be like, yeah, I guess, sort of, in like a traumatic, like I need to talk to my therapist sort of way. But again, that's another story where like romance is a big deal. Mind you, part 2 is a thing, and I'm not going to speak to that definitively yet because we're still waiting to find out like how everything is going to be resolved. But at least in the context of part 1, anytime there's like a romantic subplot, it gets resolved, right? Like obviously the thing with Makima lingers throughout the story, but that's because it's part of that whole story that doesn't get resolved until the end of part 1. Reze gets introduced, that gets resolved in her arc. Then you have Himeno, right? Obviously her thing gets resolved before she, you know, gets yeeted away, right? We'll have to wait for a battle shonen where the protagonist's sole goal is to get the girl. And not just open up to someone, but literally say it's his goal. But the story is sick and weird, so the guy never succeeds. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. I mean, it's kinda Chainsaw Man, right? In a way. Denji, like, has romantic feelings for people, but, like, it just never works out because we're not allowed to have nice things in Chainsaw Man. Have I read D. Gray Man? No, but it's on the list for sure. Yeah. Honestly, I had intended to read some of the new Jump chapters for like a half hour, but honestly, I'm gonna go ahead and call it because I feel like we had a pretty good discussion on something that's been on my mind, at least in the context of manga. I do feel like obviously it's not like a definitive conclusion to the topic, but I do feel like I got the reaction that I was expecting from you guys. And I feel pretty consistent with the conclusions I reached when I was making my video. And in terms of the context of Dandadan, I pretty much am at a point where I felt like a week ago, and I agree with you, Edens, where like Dandadan at this point is just, it's a manga. It's really all it is. It's like trying to define like a superhero comic. It's like, well, what genre is it besides just like Superman or Wonder Woman, right? You know what I mean? The romance genre in general has changed a lot, even in non-battle series. It usually comes down to like what magazine the manga is in. Because if it's in the same magazine as like Sign of Affection, it's gonna be like purely a romance. Like Sign of Affection is like about as pure of a romance as you can get. It's not a rom-com. It's not a sports series. Like it is purely a romance. It's a romantic thriller, if you want to call it that. There's a newer one called like Fall in Love, You False Angels. That's also a romance. That's what that is. What's the new anime that everyone really, really likes? Let me look it up on Crunchyroll. Popular. If it's not in the top like 20, I'm going to be like, what are we smoking? Everyone's been talking about it. It sucks because I've read this too, and I can't remember the name. I've read the manga. New rom-com anime. You and I are polar opposites. You and I are polar opposites. Mind you, this is not Weekly Shonen Jump. This is Jump Plus. But that's like a pretty good example of like a rom-com. It's not like a sports series. It's not like a whatever. It's not like purely a romance, but that's like pretty textbook like rom-com. So it kind of comes down to like the magazine, because Weekly Shonen Jump I don't think has ever had something that's like purely just a romance. The closest thing you'll get is like a romantic comedy, like Himiten. Himiten is a romantic comedy / harem series, if you want to call it that. Arthur vs. Dragon and Fire Force was great, but the previous episode with Tamaki is still a top 5 episode. Yeah, that's gonna be. I will say though, I really hope they knock it out of the park with Arthur vs. Dragon round 2. That's gonna be crazy. That's gonna be, if they do it right, that's gonna be so good. But we'll see. Anyway, yeah. I feel like we're at a good point to wrap things up today. I do have to check and see. I think we're gonna stream again Friday, same time, but I just want to check. Just gonna check real quick. Bear with me for a second. Yeah, so don't quote me yet, but because something might come up Friday for me, but the plan for now, not set in stone yet, but the plan for now is to stream sometime Friday, but we'll see. Yeah, because it worked out this way where I actually have 2 days, like at the beginning and the end of the week, where I don't have to work. So we'll see. We got Andy's Brain Snot, fun name. First Shonen OG stream. Well, I'm sorry you're coming at the end of the stream, but glad to have you. Hope we see you at the next stream that will hopefully be Friday. Anyway, thanks everybody. Look out for a video tomorrow. Hopefully, might get pushed to Thursday. And then there'll be like 1 or 2 other videos this weekend as well. Other than that, peace out. Have a good one.